Walking Rant. Was segregation great for black people? I don't know, let's talk about it. I'll start with a story. My mother has this great group of older black women she's friends with here in Michigan. They have all lived through segregation. So for some of you who are like,
all that kind of stuff is a long time ago.
Every single one of these women lived through segregation. And what they like to do when they get together is tell really great stories about parties, events, and things they used to do that only had black people involved. One of her friends, who was born and raised in Detroit, said when they used to have house parties, they would be jiving, having a great time. They know that nobody was gonna scare them or kick them out or arrest them. And as they are in these parties, people like the Four Tops, the Temptations, Smokey Robinson would show up and just hang out, go to the cooler and get a drink or a beer or whatever. As the night goes on, they would start harmonizing and singing like a free concert. And she goes, this happened all the time. That's why a lot of us didn't see them as uber superstars. We just saw them as guys from around the way. One of the reasons why they went to these parties is because they felt comfortable. Still going in a club or a bar where it could be integrated still can pose a problem for a black man. You go in there and you don't know what kind of hassles or troubles you may get into. So if you're just partying with your own people, you know what's going to happen. They also talked about going to schools before integration and how when you were there, all your teachers were black, all the administrators were black. They would hug you, they would care for you, they would make sure, some of the poorer kids got things to eat. It was a loving community. And that was the same as in their communities. People would have block parties and house parties and everybody on the street would get together. Everybody knew everybody. The same lady even said, once integration happened, a lot of the black teachers were fired. New white teachers trying to get their footing, ones who just left college, they took their place of these tenured teachers. Not because the teachers weren't good, they wanted to give the white women teachers jobs. So a lot of the administrators and teachers were fired. It's like DEI. Isn't that interesting? And now you have teachers in a school with a group of kids they can't stand because they're just there to get a paycheck. There was an older black woman who said she went to an integrated school and the teacher was white. And when she wanted to ask the teacher a question, the teacher would go, hold on a second. The teacher would hold a napkin over her face and tell her to not get too close to her as she was talking and asking this teacher for help. Then when she was done, she'd go back to her seat. The teacher would take the napkin and put it in her desk. She only did it to her. She was the only black student in the class. She started feeling so self-conscious and embarrassed, she stopped asking her questions, which is exactly what the teacher wanted her to do. She stopped asking her questions. She started falling behind in school and eventually just dropped out of school. She talked about how in integrated schools, people were like,
oh, they'll be better. It'll be more equal.
And really a lot of kids of color failed because the community, the love that they were getting from their own people wasn't there anymore. My mother taught me a phrase when I was really young, and she goes, what people used to say was, the white man's ice is colder. And my mom told me the meaning. When integration happened, there were a ton of restaurants that black people weren't allowed to eat in. So what they started doing was they stopped going to black restaurants because now there were all these other restaurants that were open to them. Little did they know, in a lot of these restaurants, people would spit in their food or do something dastardly to their food because they really didn't want them in there. They were forced by the government to be in there. On another note, integration was extremely beneficial for marginalized groups that are on the fringe, like white women or Italians at the time. Another story. My grandfather was the president of the NAACP and also was very active in fighting for rights for workers at the steel mill, where everybody in the town where I came from worked. A big deal was the black people and the Italians weren't allowed to become part of the union. So my grandfather worked tirelessly for equal rights for those groups. My dad actually grew up next to Dean Martin. That name may be too old for some of you, but they grew up next to Dean Martin because it wasn't just a black neighborhood. It was black, Italian, and all of the groups that were too dark to be considered white. My grandfather remembered as a young child having to flee his home with his 13 brothers and sisters and heading up north because the Klan said his father, who was a wealthy black man, didn't deserve to be wealthy. Even though he worked hard, had a large area, I guess it would be considered a plantation, although there was no slaves there, they felt that he was uppity and didn't deserve that. And they said, if you're not gone by morning, we are going to burn down your house and kill all of your children. So the whole group came up north and started from nothing again. That part of his history drove him to tirelessly work for equal rights for every woman, man, and child. Regardless of the answer, I really wish we as Americans can really get together, stop fighting each other, and work for the common good. This division we have It's draining, and it's turning America into a third world country.
We attended a one-room schoolhouse. Our teachers came from another community, and they boarded with us in our home. And in those schools, your parents had to come and in the winter and make a fire in the heaters because there were no electricity. There were nothing there. It was just a building. Everybody from classes from 1 to 8th grade was in that building, and the teacher would call up the second grade to come up front, and when she finished with them, they would go back, and the next class would come up, and she would teach them. We had outside toilet. We had no water. The parents would bring water or whatever. The sisters had that? They had more than we had. We got their books oftentimes where they torn out pages or whatever. How do I look at this? It was the norm. Okay, so what do you compare it to? You knew that there was a difference, but your teachers and your parents were dedicated to making sure that you learned as much as possible. Did they have better? Yes. 8th grade, they closed the one-room schoolhouse that we were attending, and we went downtown Sugarloaf to the high school, where everything was the black high school, segregated still. We still had outside facilities. The teachers, they were dedicated, and they wanted to make sure you succeeded. Nothing. It was just normal. I mean, it was normal. You played with each other. You were in this little community, and everybody was not the same. There were some white parents didn't really want their kids interacting with the black kids, but then there were others who weren't exactly as strict. You interacted with each other, but as a child, you just played. It's not. You knew there were differences, but there wasn't stuff in your face if you